Hello. Are you all as nervous as I feel? I've told this story a number of times, so, but never to a large group. It's usually just to one individual, so I'm not quite sure where to focus. My story really started on November 14th, 2014. I was at work, and I was, doing everything that I would normally do, getting ready for Christmas. The place that I was working was having a wreath building program open up to the public, and it was my job to go around the property and collect branches from cedar boughs or spruce trees and get them ready for the people that were coming in to make wreaths. And I thought on the property I was clipping around, and I went into the back part of the property where the behind the pole barn that we used to have, because there were some really good cedar branches back there, and I thought that would be a good place to go. And as I was cutting, I had my arms full, and I had stepped down into the grass from the forest floor, and I didn't see that there was a depression. And my heel caught because it was wet, and my momentum carried me forward, but my foot stayed planted, and I went down. What had happened was I dislocated my knee quite bad. I popped my femur on top of my tibia. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my PCL, my LCL, pinched a artery, and disrupted the common peroneal nerve in my right leg. I didn't know this, of course, at the time. I thought I'd just broken my leg, and there was nobody around. It was November, mid-November, and it was cold that day, and to my surprise, there was somebody that was riding his bike along the pathway, and I had yelled out to him, "I broke my leg." And he stopped his bike and he looked around, and I'm sure he thought I was, drunk. So he got back on his bike and he continued on. I yelled at the top of my lungs, "I broke my fucking leg." And he stopped again, and he turned around and he started coming to me. And he said, "Well, I don't have a cell phone, I don't have anything." And I said, "Well, if you just go to the house, tell them to call an ambulance, and I'll get some help." I was in the OR for quite a while. My leg was not reset. I was finally given some pain medication, and I didn't know it at the time, but they had paged the chief of orthopedic surgery, because my leg was so bad that he had to finish up in a surgery, and then he himself had come down to reset my leg. They doped me up on a nice Special K cocktail, so I didn't feel much. I was a pink Angry Bird marshmallow for quite a while, but I didn't feel anything when they reset the leg. He was coming in for the next 4 days, I guess, checking my toes and checking to see everything. I didn't know it at the time, but there were some talks that they were going to have to amputate, because they weren't quite sure if the blood flow had been cut off long enough, or it was restricted enough that they were going to have to amputate. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that for about a month after. Anyways, I got a casque. I'm a big Rough Riders fan, so I got a green casque from toe to hip, and didn't think anything of it. Got my cast off. They transferred me to to see a surgeon in New Westminster. He took a look at my leg, and you always, if you're ever in the hospital and you see interns and they all smile, you know you're in trouble because they have never seen anything like what you're presenting to them at the time. Everybody was quite happy to see me. All the interns were quite happy. So, as it turned out, I didn't, it was a complete tear of my ACL, my PCL, and my LCL. The MCL was only partially torn. There was significant disruption in my common perineal nerves, so I didn't have any dorsal flexion. I could push my foot down, I just couldn't lift it up. So I've got partial paralysis in my right leg. It was at that point that the doctor had said, he was asking me a bunch of questions about the feeling of my foot. I couldn't really feel it, and he said, well, you know, it still might be swelling and the whole thing. He said, but, you know, you've only got 60 degrees flexion in your leg. We have to get that up to 115. So I worked my ass off for the month of December. My appointment was the beginning of January. I was going to get to 115 degrees. I got to 120 the first week of January. And I was fully anticipating that I was going to have a surgery date and I was going to get this taken care of. But no, that didn't happen. I didn't get my surgery until April. So doing the math, that's 6 months basically since my accident. I was non-weight bearing. I was only able to shower once or twice a week because that's all that WorkSafe would send out a care aid. All of this was compounding. I was starting to get more and more depressed. You're not showering, you're not cleaning yourself off, you're not. My wife was working during the day, so there was no. It was easy to go back to bed. It was easy to say, well, what's the point? It was easy, you know, all of this other stuff that goes along with it. Had my surgery. You know, I worked really hard, I guess is the whole point. If something happens, I work really hard. I might not be the best at it, but I work hard. And and then I had my surgery. And it was time for me to go home. But we have stairs in our house. It was a fight with WorkSafe to get me put into a convalescent care where I could actually have proper physiotherapy while I was trying to rehab because I was going to be non-weight bearing for 6 weeks. That was a struggle. I ended up changing case managers, I guess in September. The new case manager had no idea. She thought it was just a simple dislocation. She didn't realize how serious the operation was. But she determined that I should have been better by now. Things like a walker, they were not approved. Things like a knee pillow, because I had to wear a knee brace 24 hours a day, was not approved. And when you have metal and plastic compounding on your leg, it's on your good leg, it's not pleasant. I have to wear a size and a half to 2 sizes bigger on my right foot because of the AFO that I have to wear. An extra pair of shoes wasn't provided. I have to wear my AFO all the time, so indoor shoes is required because it doesn't have any traction on the bottom. That was not approved. So all of these things had to be appealed. I wrote appeals, I won appeals, I wrote more appeals, I won more appeals. It just seemed insanity to me. I'd gone through some more physio, and by the end of October, they'd canceled me off. They said, okay, you've had enough. You should be better by now. In fact, you should have been better when you got out of the hospital after your surgery because you've had 6 months of rehab. Well, I'm not a rocket scientist, but one would think that if you're non-weight bearing for 7 months almost, there's going to be some atrophy that takes place. And the extent of my physiotherapy when my case manager changed was 70% upper body, 30% lower body. That does not make any sense. I was not retrained how to walk. I still walk with a limp because that's never been addressed. But all of these appeals happened. I had to write them all. I had my appointment with my accident employer, who said, I'll try to get the words right, but he said, someone like you doesn't transfer over to doing a clerical or a customer service position. I was a building service worker, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, what do you mean? He said, well, you should take this opportunity. You should go and do something that you really want to do. So I said, okay. You know, I'm given the green light by my accident employer to do something that I really want to do. So I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna go and look at graphic design. And I did. I went to open houses, I toured schools, I did all my homework, I did all my due diligence. There was never any issues from WorkSafe. You know, they were behind me. I had to submit portfolios to them. I had to write the proposal that I wrote was 90 pages long, telling them how I would benefit from this whole thing. I had my PFI, which determines the extent of the injury and how much compensation you're going to get. And they came back to me in March and told me that, well, because you're getting X amount of dollars, we only have to get you to a minimum wage job, so we're just going to send you to a customer service program. I was stunned. I was told by my accident employer that someone like me couldn't do customer service. So how 5 months later is that a position that I'm qualified for? A piranha doesn't kill you by taking one bite. It's the 1,000 bites that kills you. And that's what it was like for me. It was having to fight not only the injury and not only having to recover, but it was having to fight the bureaucracy. And really being made to feel inhuman. You're a number and nothing more. Just a number. Prior to that, I probably got the best advice I've ever been given. It was in November of 2015. My nephew, my grandma had just passed away, and my nephew was 5 at the time. He was born with his left hand wasn't fully developed. So he came and sat down beside me on the couch, and he said, "So, Uncle, does your leg hurt?" And I didn't figure, you know, he had to go through all of these problems as well. So there was no point in sugarcoating anything for him. So I said, "Yeah, it hurts." He said, "What does it feel like?" And he said, "Well, there's a burning pain in my leg." And he said, "So can you still do things?" I said, "Well, I can do some things still the same, but other things I have to change, and other things I can't do at all. I haven't figured out how to do that yet." And he looked at me and he said, "Uncle, sometimes you just have to try." And I didn't think of that at the time when I got the news in March that I wasn't, the work that I had done and trying to find the schools and trying to do something beyond what I was doing and trying to, you know, be a productive member of society. Those little bites finally got to me, and I grabbed my prescription of Percocets that I had and a bottle of scotch, and I thought, is there enough in here to do it? Is there enough in here that will take me out? And I remember sitting in my chair, holding both bottles, and thinking, I can't let my wife find me. And that's the only thing that really prevented me from doing the unthinkable, really. And it was because of her that she encouraged me to continue to fight the system, which I did. It took a long time, from March until May, when WorkSafe finally agreed to a divergence of funds to pay for some of my schooling. I got a student loan for the rest. I wrote a grant and got a bursary for that. For some of it, I wrote a grant, or I wrote a proposal to get a scholarship, which I received. I wrote and provided some of my previous work, because I was a self-taught graphic designer before. I did write a proposal and provide that to the school to try to get rid of my first term, which they accepted. So really, having to do all of this writing, little did I know at the time, you just have to try. In Nixon's words, you just have to try, Uncle. So I went to school. The first 2 terms were awful. I hated it. I didn't think I was good enough. I just didn't think I was good enough, to be quite honest. And as I went on, I did a tour of the school, and there we were, and I was walking down the halls, and I was looking at some of the cases where some of the students' works were, and I thought, these are all people just like me. I can do this. And my first term of my first class of my first term, we had an assignment. The instructor had said, pick an object, you're going to work with it for the next 11 weeks. I chose a pen. Oddly enough, I'd written so many things, I chose a pen. My last term of school, for my senior project, I decided to partner with a CMHA, and I thought I would turn pens. And at first, I thought it would just be a conceptual idea. I didn't think it was going to be real. When I talked to them, they were all for it. They loved the idea. And I was initially just going to turn 3 pens out of driftwood, and they convinced me to turn 10. I had to come up with packaging. I had to come up with a logo. I had to come up with a website. I had to come up with all of the other incidental things that come along with a sort of a real idea. And I ended up selling all 10 pens for $60 each. Donated $600 to the CMHA. I ended up graduating with honors. First 4 terms, I graduated on the dean's list. The last term, I graduated on the president's list. So, to the OH&S manager, this past winter for Christmas, I did a number of markets. I just finished the Make It show yesterday. The story was well received. People appreciated it. People liked that there was something and some meaning behind what I was offering. And I will end off by reading you part of the letter that wraps the pen that gets put in the bottle. Depression can leave you feeling empty, alone, and without purpose, as if you were a piece of driftwood. On bad days, you float aimlessly across the water with no land in sight. Waves crash on top of you. The force of the water pushes you below the surface and holds you there, making it difficult, if not impossible, to catch your breath. On good days, a gentle wind can direct you towards the shore and push you up onto the beach, high enough where the waves are unable to grab you and drag you back in. If you land on the right beach, someone may pick you up and offer you the tools needed to apply meaningful change. It isn't easy and it takes effort, but like this driftwood pen, with all its knots and weathered imperfections, you can rediscover the value and beauty that you present to the world. It's not a simple pen. It's a symbol of perseverance and hope. Thank you.